Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. I know House Republicans are busy right now getting their formal impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden started, with the first hearing set for next week on the 28th. But we've really got to get going on impeaching the DHS secretary, too. Alejandro Mayorkas is creating a new Homeland Intelligence experts group composed of 17 members. And the members are exactly the kinds of power-hungry propagandistic mouthpieces that you'd expect. Reading now from the post-millennial, quote, included in this group of private sector, quote-unquote, experts are 3 former officials who signed onto the October 2020 letter calling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation. CNN national security analyst and former director of national intelligence James Clapper, senior fellow and of the Intelligence Project and former CIA operations officer Paul Colby, and Fordham University School of Law distinguished fellow and former CIA director John Brennan were all named to the quote-unquote experts group, end quote. They'll be meeting 4 times a year to discuss how better to exploit their manufactured crises to lie to the American people that conservatives need to be further repressed because of it. Lucky us. Seriously, look at all the pro-lifers and J6ers getting locked up. It's like we're living behind the Iron Curtain, a world where criminals get released or paid big money to write bogus defund the police papers for county governments like they're doing in Kings County in Washington state, while those who defend themselves from said criminals are the ones getting locked up. And going back to the merry trio of Hunter Biden laptop deniers, remember all the whistleblowers who came out a few months ago to say that the intel community was literally recruiting signatories for that letter. And they all knew it was a lie from the beginning, but they all said they need to give good talking points for Biden to use during 2020's presidential debates against President Trump. Because I do. I remember all of that, and I know you do too. Joining us now to discuss is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, good evening.
Great. So when it comes to this experts group being created by the DHS, how concerning is that to you?
Well, it's really concerning because we're looking at individuals who were encouraged by a presidential campaign to participate in a false narrative. The mainstream media and the Biden campaign, working with the White House, they all came together to create this false narrative before the election to suppress information from this laptop. So these are security officials who knew better, who knew what the intelligence was, and chose to sign something that was not true. They knew it wasn't true at the time, but they did it anyway. And the reward for interfering with an election is not criminal charges. It's not embarrassment. It's not being forced to retire and put out to pasture. It's being awarded the prestige of being part of this committee of experts to advise DHS on intel and national security issues. It's beyond deeply troubling because these are individuals who are willing to compromise their integrity, their position, their good names for political purposes.
That it is. And when you look at the history of these different agencies, we could go past even the DHS. We can go back decades to the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, all these different intel agencies. And what do? Their main idea is to shape and mold, really, the flow of information to the public, to shape people, what they're hearing, how they're hearing it, how they're interpreting those events, and then what they're going to do with that information, i.e. how they're going to vote, who they're going to support, who they're not going to support. That is the bread and butter of intel agencies. So sometimes it feels like we're just yelling at the wall or trying to fight against the ocean on this, because we can point out the many times that Brennan, Clapper, and the rest have lied, and have purposely lied, whether it's the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, or can go back to the Russiagate hoax, or I'm sure so many other scandals before that, some of which, only a fraction of which we know. The rest of it remains buried until some journalists with integrity in the future will be able to expose all of that. But does this show that the main idea here with this panel is that repeating the lie often enough, it'll then become truth, quote unquote, in air quotes, of course, to the public? And that's the idea here, of which they'll be meeting 4 times a year, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is something out of 1984. These are people that have demonstrated a willingness to come together and create a false narrative. And, you know, to put this in context, you had a conservative Republican social media figure who put out false memes saying, you know, tweet your vote for Hillary. He was prosecuted by DOJ and put in jail for election interference, when these are individuals with the information to know there was truth behind this laptop. And again, they're being rewarded with prestige and ongoing success in their careers because they were willing to parrot a false narrative for political reasons.